What's going on, everybody? It's Nathan back again, here to bring you guys another video, and this one's actually going to be doing my weekly review on Season 4 of The Walking Dead, Episode 5, Internment. And right off the bat, I have to say, brilliant episode. This episode was absolutely just awesome. Really, I think the best we have in a while. So yeah, this is Season 4, Episode 5, Internment, and we didn't really know what was going to happen in this episode. I mean, there was a few speculations between, the title of the episode, which meant imprisonment, and, we didn't know what's going to happen. We were going to see Daryl, we were going to see Rick tell Daryl that Carol, that he vanished Carol or not. So starting off the episode, we actually see Rick again in the car. So he's basically just driving back to the prison after he left Carol, same day and everything. He's driving back to the prison, and that's basically what we see right before basically the intro cuts. So it's just basically him driving and him kind of thinking about some things. Probably thinking, did I do the right thing by exiling Carol, or anything like that. And then it just cuts to the intro song, obviously. So this was a brilliant episode, and I think it was really, really brilliant because Scott Wilson, who is the guy who plays Herschel, had a major part in this episode. So I think he was basically the star of this episode. There was so much that Herschel done in this episode. It was just incredible work by Scott Wilson. It's just really, really well done. So now in Cell Block A, after obviously the intro rolls, Cell Block A, it just cuts to Herschel, Glenn, and Sasha trying to basically intubate one of the survivors. Trying to stick a tube down their throat and basically give them air. They're trying to do this to Henry, who's violently ill, and Glenn basically asks, how long the breathing apparatus, can keep him alive. Like, how long can this really do anything, And Herschel basically says, as long as it has to, and as long as we're willing to do it. So basically saying, that can keep him alive as long as nothing goes wrong. And yeah, because they're basically dying because their lungs are, not getting enough oxygen, obviously. And so now Herschel and Glenn, they actually find another survivor, Mr. Jones, and he's dead in his cell. So unfortunately for that, but Glenn was just about to put him down, and Herschel was like, basically, let's not do it here. Don't scare the other people that are sick in here. What might happen to them when they die. So he's dead inside their cell, and they load the body onto a gurney and wheel it outside to prevent the others from seeing. So Glenn basically now remarks that Herschel's never had to put down a patient, and then stabs Mr. Jones in the head as he starts to turn. So we know that Herschel has never actually had to kill one of his patients before. That's gonna change. Alright, so later Maggie and Herschel talk on the opposite sides of the execution chamber, the window, as we've seen before in previous episodes, with Carol and Lizzie talking back and forth between the window. And Herschel basically tells Maggie that Glenn is fine, he's just resting, and he doesn't want to see Maggie right now. He's resting, he helped him so much. And Maggie basically, says, I want to help you. You can rest, and he basically just refuses. He refuses. Like he doesn't want her in the sick ward. He doesn't want her getting sick. Neither does Glenn. Glenn wouldn't stand for that. Glenn would just, I don't even know what he would do if Maggie made her way in there. But definitely get her out in a hurry. So yeah, now afterwards, right after Herschel leaves, Maggie. At this point, Herschel has been in the episode almost fully, like right up to the extent, and like more than Rick, more than any other character yet, Herschel's been in this episode. So yeah, afterwards Glenn basically thanks Herschel for not telling Maggie about his true health condition. He's really worse off than just having to rest, and she would just, we could, like, he basically says to Herschel, if you told her about my actual condition, she would rush in here and she would get sick. So we couldn't do anything to keep her out. So now back outside, Maggie lets Rick through the perimeter gate after taking down some zombies on the fence. And now there actually is a pretty cool conversation with Rick, a pretty cool moment. I rather liked it, to be honest with you. Rick made it through the perimeter fence, and they were talking for a second, and Maggie kept pushing Rick, where's Carol? Where's Carol? Where's Carol? Where's Carol? And Rick basically keeps trying to avoid the question, but then eventually has to tell her. And he tells her that, he banished Carol for killing Carrot and David, and plans to inform only Herschel for now. So Maggie agrees that it's the right thing to do, and she updates him on the fence situation. Basically, saying there's a cluster of walkers becoming unmanageable up against the fence, and they don't really know what to do. So Rick now visits Carl in quarantine to drop off basically a bag of food from his supply run with Carol. Carl insists he's healthy and offers to help, but Rick refuses. I'm not risking you. I'm not risking you going back to the baby, getting her sick, or anything like that. He just doesn't want his son to be out in that. And there's this really cool conversation there too. All right, so now Herschel's checking on Dr. S. Now, we've actually seen this in the sneak peek from this episode last week, where Herschel's basically checking on Dr. S, and he just looks horrible. He pulls out a gun from under his bed, and he just looks absolutely horrible. No way he's coming back from this. So he's near death. Dr. S basically tells Herschel that the patients are reaching the end stage from which there is no recovery. If you're not ready to lose one, you're going to lose them all. So he basically just says, focus on the ones you can save, because you can't save me, There's no way I'm getting back from this, so focus on the ones you can save. Herschel maintains that they're not desperate. Dr. S opens a crate, and it's filled with guns and ammunition, and warns Herschel to prepare. So he's basically just a lost cause at this point. So Herschel now starts to shut all the cell doors. Another patient dies. Sasha fetches the gurney, and Herschel basically urges her to rest. She looks horrible as well, about the same as Glenn. She just looks really, really bad. And now she's gone to rest. And at this point, Herschel gets the body onto the gurney, and he covers the patient's face with a sheet, wheels it into the execution chamber window room away from the other people, and finally kills one of his own patients. He stabs him right in the forehead. Or head, whatever. Anyways, through the observation window, Rick notices this, and he basically tells Rick they've lost 3 patients. When we get past this thing, it's not going to be how it was it? That's what Rick says to Herschel, and Herschel basically says absolutely not. So now Rick tells him about Carol, and right after that, we don't see him talking to him about Carol, but he's like, I have to talk to you about Carol. And then it cuts to Herschel walking out of the execution chamber room, observation window, or whatever that is. Now Herschel now finds Sasha collapsed in her cell, gives her an IV bag as he tends to her. A female patient dies and turns in a nearby cell. So we don't really know exactly what's going to happen here. We see a girl turn in a nearby cell where Herschel's trying to save Sasha's life. And so meanwhile, Maggie and Rick are up at the fence as the cluster of walkers. Basically, they push against it. It's starting to collapse. They're saving it somewhat, putting logs against it, propping the fence up against the ground. And now back in the cell block, Glenn is tending to Henry, which seized by coughing fit. Glenn falls to the floor after Henry dies. He falls to the floor, blood gushing out of his mouth. At this point, I didn't know if Glenn was going to survive. I mean, I didn't really see him dying off to a flu, to be honest with you, but it really looked like he was going to die here. As soon as Henry died, he called for Herschel, basically Herschel to try to come save his life or do something. or just get him out of there and go put him out of his misery. So as soon as he started calling Herschel, he's seized by this coughing fit. He coughs up blood. He collapses onto the floor, and basically just starts, choking. And Lizzie finds Glenn, and basically just as Henry reanimates, turns. So the female walker now leaves her cell and attacks Herschel. A man comes out of his cell, tries to help Herschel. A man is about to shoot the female walker, and then another walker, which is actually the man's son that had the gun, bites his arm. He shoots another patient instead after he bit his arm. So there's another patient dead from carelessness with a gun, I guess. So now Rick and Maggie are outside preparing more wood to prop against the fence, and Rick tells they hear the gunshots. Rick tells Maggie to go investigate while he stays behind to reinforce the fence. Maggie says basically, you can't do it alone, and he says, I know, I'll get someone. So he goes and actually gets Carl. Now, I know we all know that he didn't really want him out there in the first place, didn't want to get sick or anything like that, but he has to get Carl to help him. Now, so he fetches Carl to help him, and yeah. So meanwhile, now Lizzie is trying to actually lure Henry away from Glenn. That's what she's been trying to do. Glenn was on the ground choking to death, and Glenn probably would have died from the walker if Lizzie didn't do this, to be honest with you. So Lizzie is luring Henry away from Glenn, trips and falls, and before the walker can bite her, Herschel manages to throw it onto the netting between the second and first floors of the cell block. So I thought that was really, really cool. A really cool physical moment of Herschel. We haven't really seen much of that. Very badass moment for Herschel. This entire episode was really badass for him. So, yeah. Now, Herschel puts Lizzie and Luke in a cell and tells them basically, to stay put. He checks on Glenn, who's now choking on his own blood. Herschel runs to Dr. S's cell to retrieve the guns. Dr. S is turned and lunges at him. Herschel stabs Dr. S through the eye. So we see that Dr. S is now turned. Very, very sad. I kind of liked his character. Definitely could have had more development in the comic book. Really cool character. He died early on in the comic book, but still, pretty cool character for the time being. But anyways, yeah. So now outside, Carl and Rick are trying to prop up the fence with wooden posts, and not doing a very good job. So they prop up the fence. They have a little moment there, and all of a sudden, one of the pieces of wood snaps on the fence. So they rush over. Rick tries to hold the fence up against the walkers without the wood, and to no avail. The fence comes crashing in, and the walkers are now, they breach the fence. They breach the outer perimeter fence, and Rick and Carl basically run away, close the door behind them, and they flee into the prison courtyard as the walkers fill. They fill the inside perimeter of the fences. Now Rick and Carl are now arming themselves with automatic rifles and ammunition. Rick's kind of trying to explain to Carl how to use it. Try to make sure the clip is in the gun, the magazine's in the gun. Make sure you pull back on the. Oh, my mind's drawing a blank right now. Just basically tries to explain, how to use it. So when the walkers break through the inner fence, now Rick and Carl basically shoot them dead. It was pretty badass. It was I seen on Talking Dead they were talking about it as like a bonding moment, what I thought was really funny, to be honest with you. Because most families, father and son basically, like, I don't know, don't do that. So yeah. Now after that, where am I? Okay. So yeah, they shoot them dead, and back in the cell block now, Herschel loads one of Dr. S's shotguns and basically lures the walkers to the observation tower. So basically out of Lizzie and Mika's sight, basically to shoot them. He didn't want to shoot them in front of the kids. I thought that was kind of dumb. They're gonna see it. They're gonna see it sooner or later, so you might as well, do it now. And unable to break the door now, Maggie shatters the glass to the observation window and jumps through. Doesn't really care, he can't keep that chick out. So yeah, now Herschel finds Glenn still choking on the floor and remembers that the incubator is attached to Henry, which we all know Henry got thrown over the railing onto the cage between the both floors. So now he jumps over the he jumps over the post onto the cage and tries to get the incubator back from Henry. Maggie rushes into the cell block, basically sees Herschel struggling to retrieve the tube from Henry. She shoots Henry in the head, and Herschel basically gets the incubator and rushes to Glenn's side to administer the tube. Now, at this point, I honestly thought that Glenn was going to die. He couldn't breathe. His face was turning blue. A very, very close save for them. They got the tube down his throat, and they got him to breathe all right. So, that a very, very good sign for Glenn. All right, so now Rick and Carl are picking off the straggling walkers, basically trying, after them slaughtering every single walker with the machine guns. They're basically just going around the ones that are still awake and, I guess, not really breathing, but just alive. They're just taking a metal pipe and just ending them that way. So now Daryl and his crew return. This is like the end of the episode. Daryl and his crew return. Basically kind of to save the day, to administer the meds. Tyrese runs inside and comforts Sasha in her cell. Maggie urges Herschel to rest while she and Bob tend to Glenn. Give Glenn the medicine. Herschel's done everything this episode. He deserves some sort of a rest. So he goes back to his cell. Dr. S's cell. He closes Dr. S's remaining eyes. And basically opens his Bible, and he can't read it. He starts, I guess he just starts weeping or crying. Very, very cool moment for Herschel. Very dramatic, I guess. Very good acting on the part of Scott Wilson as well. So yeah, the next morning now, Michonne is loading the walkers into the flatbed of the truck, and Herschel informs Tyrese and Glenn survived the night, or Herschel informs Tyrese that Glenn survived the night and is breathing on his own. When Daryl asks Herschel about Carol, Herschel basically, says she's fine, but go talk to Rick. In the garden now, Rick and Carl notice that their crops are beginning to ripen. Rick basically offers Carl a bean and tastes one himself. Again, kind of another bonding moment for father and son, so I thought that was a really cool moment. Now, Herschel offers to go along with Michonne to dispose of the corpses as the corpses are in the back of the truck. As they dry off, they fail to notice someone watching from the tree line. Epic music hits, and guess who's back? The governor. So, really, really exciting. I cannot wait until next episode. I'm going to be doing some prediction videos, obviously, for next episode as well. This coming Thursday on November the 14th. So, that's going to be really, really cool. I cannot wait for that. This next episode is going to be Season 4, Episode 6, and this one's entitled Live Bait. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to be a standalone Governor episode. I believe it should be, probably explaining to us, where he's been. But anyways, leaving those predictions until the actual video. And, yeah, I just cannot wait until next episode. I really, really cannot. This episode was mint. I think the best episode ever. Herschel or Scott Wilson did an amazing job at acting this episode. Very, very physical throughout the entire episode. Very, very cool. And, there was just so many moments with Rick and Carl, father and son. Herschel trying to save Glenn. Just everything about this episode was mint. Perfect. Even though Daryl, Tyrese, Michonne, all the badasses weren't really there. Herschel is a bona fide badass. There's no getting away from that. There's no getting away from that. Very, very cool episode. It was all about Herschel. I was really scared that some main character would die today. I was thinking it might have been Herschel, since they gave him this big spotlight during this episode. But I don't know. I guess it's not this episode. Might be soon. Who knows? Leave that to later prediction videos. And yeah, thank you guys for watching this episode review video on Season 4, Episode 5, Internment. And if you guys did enjoy, go check out the prediction video for this episode. I didn't get very many predictions right. I got some a little right. You know, I was kind of on the tail of it. But yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy this. And if you did, hit this video up with a like, share it around with your friends. And as always, I guess subscribe if you haven't yet. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. Alright guys, bye.